G'day mates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I haven't done a news video in a bit and there's a bunch to talk about. We have our first news of when we are going to get an SMG and AR nerf or some kind of weapon balance changes in the new year to try to make this meta a little bit more competitively. I'm going to talk about that at the end of today's video, what the nerf is looking like and when we can expect it. I also want to talk about some of the new things being added to the game. We had clingers added to the game today. We have the treasure maps coming back. We have an adjustment to the tents. There's a whole bunch to talk about, so let's just jump into it. Let's start off talking about the newest addition to Fortnite. We have the clingers coming back. Now, quickly, before I even talk about them, they are not in competitive, thank God. Like, I want some fun stuff in competitive. You guys know that. I'm absolutely loving the Spider-Man mythic, for example, but clingers, they're just a little bit irritating, especially in stack lobbies. You can stack a bunch of them on a floor, shoot the floor, they fall in, you die. There is absolutely no counterplay. It's a little bit annoying dealing with them in pubs because of that reason, but again, pubs, bit of craziness, bit of fun. I'm fine with that. I'm really glad to see them not in competitive. I don't really like a lot of explosives in competitive in general, just because you do have that element of being boxed up, being completely stacked, not doing anything wrong, no bad positioning, and all of a sudden just thunk, 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 and you're just gone. So not in competitive, good to see. The one thing that might be coming to competitive though, which looks like it's definitely coming to the game, is the treasure map. We had HypeX tweeting out treasure maps have been updated this season to not be stashable in tents. And Epic is also working on a rover version of them, but we don't know what it looks like yet. So what that means basically is if Epic has gone and updated the maps to not be stashable in tents, that means they're coming back to the game. You don't go and randomly change items in the game unless you're bringing them back, and tents have never been in the game before, so it's clearly a very deliberate update to fit the current Fortnite season. So it looks like treasure maps are coming back. If you guys don't know what treasure maps are, they were way back in, I don't even know which season, chapter 1 season 7 I think is when we first saw them. Basically you pick them up, they were a gold item, they were a legendary rarity, they were a map, and they would direct you to an X on the ground. You would pickaxe the X on the ground, a giant chest would pop up, and it would drop insanely good legendary loot. I love these things. I thought they were really fun. It does introduce a lot more legendary loot into the loot pool. You'll run into a lot more players with really stacked loot. For that reason, maybe just seeing it in pubs could be a good thing. I don't absolutely hate it in competitive, especially if we get some loot pool adjustments to the AR and the SMG, more specifically the MK7 and the Stinger SMG, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the video. Like I said, I am going to talk about when we are finally getting a weapon update this season, but as long as those weapons are adjusted, I don't see a huge issue with players having a little bit better loot running around in this loot pool. When there's items like the gold spaz that can one pump people, I feel like having a lot of gold loot running around is a huge issue. At the moment, if we had the MK7 and Stinger SMG nerfed a little bit, I wouldn't mind if some people are running around with better loot. It adds that element of kind of, I don't know, it messes up your loot path a little bit. You find the treasure map, you have to go find the loot, you have to explore around, it takes you away from your regular loot pathing. You find other players doing the treasure map and you try to eliminate them and take the loot. It also means that shambles drops have a little bit more RNG in them in a fun way, in my opinion. Most likely they'll just go into pubs though, I think, and honestly I wouldn't be sad if they weren't in competitive, but I'm very happy to see them coming back to pubs. They are incredibly fun, especially for squads and trios with your friends, because then everyone gets a little bit of good loot because they always drop absolutely ridiculous loot. So I'm happy to see both these additions coming back to the game. We also had some updates to the tents themselves. We had HypeX tweeting out 2 more upcoming tent improvements. Flagpole, new, no price yet. Don't really get what that's going to be. Cooler, new, no price yet. So it looks like you might be able to buy a cooler from the tent, which could be very cool, or maybe store a cooler in the tent. Don't really know how that would work because you can't currently pick up coolers. Coolers are usually what have the chug splashes and the guzzle juices in them. They're all around the map. They're very awesome. Being able to buy them out of the tent could be very cool. Picnic table, again, don't really know how this is going to work. Maybe something you can all rest at and your whole team gets health, kind of like a campfire, but not. Upgrade station for 50 gold, that is pretty cool, but then you're gonna have to spend a ridiculous amount of money upgrading. It's just making upgrading even more expensive when it's already, in my opinion, pretty useless. No one wants to spend like 1,500 to 2,000 gold just to get a weapon to gold. Back in the day when upgrading first came out for materials and lower gold amounts, I absolutely loved it, but when's the last time you actually upgraded something? And you could buy a campfire now for 50 gold, which is kind of cool. Again, right now tents are only in pubs, they're not in competitive, so it's not really going to have any impact on that, but it's a cool change to the pub playlist. The last new item that has been leaked, and now this one is kind of crazy and could be going into competitive. HypeX tweeted out, Epic are working on an interesting rare weapon, possibly pistol type, that does a lot of damage to builds. It's still very unfinished because the clip size is still not decided. It shoots one shot every 2 seconds, so very slow. We're talking like sniper level slow. It does 75 damage or 113 headshots, so it doesn't even have a 2 headshot multiplier despite having a really slow fire time, but it does 400 damage to builds and it has a 5-second reload time. So this is a very slow firing, I'm gonna guess small clip sized weapon that has a long reload that isn't really used for shooting enemies. It's for breaking walls. This is like the OG Deagle. Remember when the Deagle one-shot walls? Yeah. That's kind of what we're looking at. And honestly, I think it could be super, super fun. Competitively, it's going to change things up a lot. A lot of people aren't going to be too happy about it. Back in the day when the Deagle one-shot walls, it was a massive, massive buff to zero ping. If you have zero ping and you're better at taking walls or holding walls, an item like this, like the heavy sniper that instantly breaks it, is a massive buff. But it's also kind of fun. I do miss heavy snipers running up to walls, heavy sniping, going psycho and pumping someone in the head. But I fully understand why competitive players are never a huge fan of that. You could be endgame, super stacked, looking good, holding your wall, making sure no one pushes you, and all of a sudden a kid just psychos up on your wall and jumps in, right? So I understand why competitive players probably won't like this item. I'm gonna guess it's most likely gonna only go into pubs, but if it does go into competitive, I'm willing to give it a chance. I think it could be really fun. It might be an exotic, and honestly, I kind of want it to be an exotic because, again, if you're playing pubs, don't know about you guys, but all the exotics right now kind of suck. You got the double barrel shotgun. It's okay, but the flint knock effect makes it a bit annoying. It's a bit of fun. It is what it is. The Klinger sniper rifle, I would rather just one-shot headshot someone than have to stick them like 6 times. I think you have like the 6-shooter, which honestly, unless you're 72 hours, is pretty garbage weapon. You've got the marksman pistol thing, I think, but either way, there's no real exotic on the map that I enjoy buying or that I'm looking forward to buying like we had last season. We had like the ice grappler, you had the fire sniper. There was some cool stuff you could buy. So if this comes back to loot pools and exotic, it could be really, really fun, and I think it could be an interesting item to add just into pubs, but a part of me is kind of hoping it goes into comp to see how it goes. Now, a topic that a lot of you guys have been asking me about everywhere. Aussie, what's happening with the SMGs, ARs? Do you think they're going to get nerfed? When are they going to get nerfed if they do? I hate Chapter 3. It's awful, all that. Let me start off explaining something that I said right back at the start of Chapter 3. The reason we have the meta we have right now, which is a spray-heavy meta with SMGs and ARs, I am positive this is because Epic knew that a lot of returning players who aren't very good, who haven't played in a while, some new players who have never played Fortnite before, or big content creators were going to come back and try Chapter 3, and they wanted to make sure they didn't load up and they were instantly getting sweated on with a box fight meta of someone full piecing them and pumping them in the head. So they made SMGs and ARs, the MK7, incredibly strong to reduce the skill gap, because that is what Epic has actively done. They have actively tried to make the skill gap lower, and I'm not going to let anyone argue against that. I get it. SMG and ARs require tracking, but that's about it. Compared to a box fight meta that's all about piece control, predicting, editing, good peaks, hitting your shots consistently, compared to just brrr, 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 like, it's not as skillful. No one's going to convince me it is. If you're having fun and you're enjoying it, that's great. I absolutely loved it for about a week or two. I found it really refreshing and really fun that everything wasn't a box fight, but I've started to get a little bit bored of just spraying into people's boxes. So I kind of want a shotgun, you know, box fight heavy meta to come back myself personally, just because that's what I feel like I can improve the most at. And when I'm improving at a game, that's when I'm having fun. So I'm not going to complain about the current meta. I fully get why casuals and some of you guys might love it, but competitively, you have to admit it's not great for the game. Competitively, the more skillful the game is, the better. So that's why we kind of want, you know, the shotgun meta to come back, and a lot of people are expecting some kind of a nerf to the Stinger SMG and the MK7's damage output before tournaments come back. Mostly the Stinger SMG. And we have some information. Sheena BR tweeted out the version 19.10 update will be released on either January 4th or January 11th, as Epic Games vacation ends on January 2nd. Again, Epic Games has been off now for almost 2 weeks for Christmas and New Year break. They're back in a few days. Sheena tweeted out, before the update drops, we can still expect this: a New Year event, Cobra Kai collaboration, new shield keg item, which we've talked about, snow stealth stone, and a new emote. But I care mostly about this update as far as balancing the existing weapons. And like I just talked about with Epic wanting to make sure that the game was new and friendly for people who haven't played a lot with the ARs and SMGs, they know the people who take the game more seriously, the consistent player base and the comp comp and tournament players will stick around for at least a month of a meta they don't really enjoy, but they only had one chance to grab those new players and those old players coming back and make them enjoy the game, where now if they kind of nerf the SMG and AR and go into more of a shotgun stable meta, people who have been playing the game for the last month might be like, okay, I'm going to try that out. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to see if I can enjoy it. They'll see the fun of improvement and they'll stick to the game. It is very smart by Epic. As much as it makes, you know, a not very fun few weeks for pros and people trying to grind arena, I get that. It is quite a smart decision from Epic. So I'm fully expecting in one of these updates that is coming up to see some kind of balancing or nerf of the SMG and AR. The MK7 is a little bit hard because if you nerf it too much, controller players, so it's always going to be harder to control recoil on controller unless you have a game like Warzone where it actively reduces recoil for controller. Just having aim assist alone isn't going to help controller players as much when the cursor's bouncing up and down because of recoil. So I get why the MK7, some people are like, look, it doesn't need to be nerfed that hard. Competitively, the only issue is when you have, you know, 100 of the best players in the world who have the best aim, who are insane, the MK7's damage output is pretty disgusting. And the amount of damage it does to build and the amount of bleed damage it does, which means how many bullets actually go through the walls even though you're turbo building them, how many of those bullets bleed through, is a huge issue for competitive. So I get why the MK7 some people debate about, but the Stinger SMG just, it needs to be nerfed. It has to be nerfed. It does way too much ridiculous amount of damage compared to the shotguns with far less skill and far too consistently. So I think most people can agree who want a higher skill ceiling meta, who want to enjoy competitive, are hoping to see the SMGs nerfed. I actually don't think the shotguns need to be buffed at all. I've been doing a challenge on my Twitch stream. You can come watch me if you want. Twitch.tv/Aussie Antics. I started it today. I'm doing open divisions, 2 champs on an alt account using shotguns and no SMGs. I managed to get about 2,500 points today in a couple hours. I was doing pretty well, actually. Honestly, if you give the shotguns a chance, they do really well. Obviously, when I get up to champs division and start versing a lot harder players who are SMG spamming, I'm going to struggle a lot harder. But ultimately, if the SMGs were nerfed, when I verse a good player and I have a shotgun and they have a shotgun, I've been doing a lot of 1v1s on my stream with my viewers and some pros. I actually think it's a pretty balanced, fair fight. I really do like the striker pump. It hits pretty consistently, doesn't hit as hard as the spaz, but if you're a good player with good piece control, I kind of like the fact that one of you doesn't just get hit for 180 to start off every single fight. It's really interesting. I don't think the shotguns need buffing, just if you nerf the SMGs, by comparison, the shotgun gets stronger. So here's hoping we get some kind of balance change and update before tournaments. And let's be honest, if Epic was going to have a crazy just spray meta for casuals, now was the time to do it. It was over Christmas break for kids and a lot of school kids who aren't, you know, obviously going to be playing, they're going to be playing more, they're not going to school, and there's no tournaments. So pros, while wanting to grind the game, there's not a lot going on. So this was the time to do it. So fingers crossed, I have faith in Epic. They will update the meta to be a little bit more competitive by the time tournaments come around. Don't worry. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed. If you did, please chuck a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.